Hello and welcome to Engineering Insights podcast. Our guest today is Cathy McClay, who's the Managing Director at the National Grid DSO. So, just to start off, could you briefly introduce your role and what you're like as the Managing Director?
Okay, so um, National Grid DSO is part of National Grid Electricity Distribution.
Hmm.
Now, that's the bit of the electricity network that brings the electricity from the the main national grid, the transmission system, which is like the superhighway, down into people's homes and businesses. And our business covers the East Midlands, the West Midlands, South Wales, and the
Hmm.
Southwest. And my job as the distribution system operator is to make sure that we plan the network properly for the
Hmm.
future. We're going through a massive change right now where we're moving to a world where we've got more electric vehicles, people are getting heat pumps, and there's a lot more solar, people have got batteries. So it used to be our network just used to take the electricity and bring it to people's homes, and
Hmm.
it was really easy to plan. It was all one way. But now, because we've got all these active things on our network, like people switching on their batteries,
Yeah.
charging and discharging, charging EVs when it's sunny, when it's not, we've got a lot of wind on our system now. Planning and operating that system's become more difficult, and the
Hmm.
distribution system operators were set up nearly 3 years ago now to manage that. And it's pretty small. In the whole of NGED, National Grid Electricity
Hmm.
Distribution, there's 7,000 people. And
Wow.
they're all the people going out, putting up the big wires and fixing things. We had the big storm recently, they're fixing it then.
Hmm.
My bit is only 100 of those
Yeah.
7,000, but we're the ones who are actually making sure the network's planned for the
Hmm.
future, that we're operating as well as we can, so that if people have got renewables, etc., we can keep them on the system all the
Hmm.
time and not waste any green molecules. And we run markets to actively manage the system.
Hmm.
So that's it in a nutshell, really.
Yeah.
But it's a fairly new bit of distribution.
Mm. And so the distribution is quite a large part of it, but what are the other areas of the National Grid and other teams that you have to work with?
Yeah, so National Grid is a really big
Hmm.
organization, and it's in the UK and the US. In the UK, we own the transmission network of England and Wales, and we
Hmm.
build that out and maintain that. And the investment in that over the next few years is massive. We have to bring all of that offshore wind
Hmm.
into our network. So it's reinforcing from Scotland, but also East Anglia as well, and bringing in all the wind.
Hmm.
Then we also have, as well as distribution, we've got National Grid Ventures, which is the non-regulated bit of the business. I have to explain the difference between regulated and
Yeah.
non-regulated. The transmission part and the distribution part, they're monopoly
Hmm.
businesses. You don't have wires running alongside
Yeah.
our wires. So we've got a regulated price control which says how much money we can earn. We've also got the ventures bit, which is more like an ordinary business.
Hmm.
It invests in things to make money. And the main thing that ventures invests in the UK is the interconnectors.
Hmm.
So they're those cables that link us to places like France, the Netherlands, Belgium, up into Scandinavia, and they can flow both ways.
Yeah.
So if prices are cheap here and more expensive in the continent, the electricity will flow to the continent.
Hmm.
And if our prices are higher, they'll flow to
Yeah.
us. And a lot of the time, they actually flow in, and that helps with security supply. So
Hmm.
that's the main bit of national grids in the UK. Those three
Yeah.
bits, and then in the states, where we've got we make just as much money, believe it or not, in the US as we do in the UK.
Mm.
But there, it's up in New York State and in Massachusetts, and there we own transmission distribution,
Mm.
and we also run retail businesses, so the people who actually sell
Yeah.
electricity and gas to people's homes. So it's a massive
Hmm.
organization, and I just am one small part of that.
Yeah. I mean, with such a big organization, there have to be some big challenges and bottlenecks. So, are they more on the like technological side of integrating all these different areas, or is it more politics and economics, economic factors?
You've hit two of the main ones, and they're both equally important. If
Hmm.
I just zoom back in on the distribution part of the
Yeah.
business, which is the bit I know best now.
Hmm.
There's the technical piece of how do we integrate all these new devices onto the
Hmm.
system and manage our network in real time and operate it well. We've never had to do that before.
Hmm.
And how do we, for instance, as we electrify, make sure the losses are low in our network. So we have a lot of innovation projects.
Hmm.
Like if we're going to manage the flows in our network well, we have to have really good visibility of what's
Yep.
going on in our network. So the amount of monitoring that we're putting on and the amount of data that we can get from smart meters in people's homes to really understand the flows, because the more we can understand, the more we can push the network and get the most out of it
Hmm.
and have to take less engineering judgment. So there's a lot of technical work around that. And for instance, we're building a digital twin of our network right now so we
Oh,
can
wow.
experiment and
Yeah.
things. So we do a lot of power system modeling to understand what's going on. But then very political as well. Um, by 2050, there's going to be more than twice as much electricity going through our networks as there
Wow.
is now.
Yeah.
That's a lot of building out.
Mm.
And, probably less of an issue on distribution. Our wires tend to be those ones that look like telegraph poles,
Hmm.
that'll be our
Yeah.
wires. And then we'll have the underground cables as well, which if you're in somewhere like London, a lot more is underground.
Hmm.
And there's a sort of pressure that we should underground everything. And that's a choice that has to be made. It's about 8 times more expensive to have
Wow.
underground cable as overhead,
Mm.
but then it might not suffer as much from
Damage and things like that.
extreme weather
Mm.
events. And that's another really interesting area for the future is the resilience of our network. We had the big storm recently, and we're in the southwest, and the people were out fixing that network and getting everyone back down with. But when you see the pictures of lines coming down because
Hmm.
trees have hit them,
Yeah.
and then it was snowing, and actually being able to get to the place to sort it out. So a lot of
Mm.
my thinking now is, can we make networks more resilient locally? And that what I mean by that is, say in your house, if you have a battery and you've got solar panels, and can we, for instance, help you maintain power in your
Hmm.
house until we get the network back?
Yeah.
Can we do that for communities with local community schemes? And so I think a lot about the resilience of the network in the future, because extreme weather events are going to become more important.
Hmm.
And as people rely more and more for electricity for transport and heat, the willingness to have a power cut just reduces more and more. It's
Yeah.
so central to our life. Like when your Wi-Fi goes out,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
a disaster, isn't it?
Mm. I mean, that's like to kind of look back at the start of your career because you're doing so many big challenges now. How
Mm.
did you know that? What did you see yourself in this place, or how did you know you wanted to do electrical engineering?
So I never really knew where I saw myself. I didn't see
Hmm.
myself here. How
Hmm.
did I get into electrical engineering? Well, it was actually in my first year of secondary school. I don't know
Mm.
what year you call that
Hmm.
nowadays, but I went to a really good grammar school in Northern Ireland. We still have the old-fashioned education system over there, and there's very few private schools at
Hmm.
all. It's all state education.
Yeah.
And in that first year, we did half a year doing electronics. So they
Oh.
actually split it. They split the year. So for the first half of the year, the girls did economics, home economics,
Hmm.
learning how to sew and stuff.
Mm.
And the guys did electronics. And then we swapped it round. So the girls did the electronics and the guys did the home economics.
Hmm.
And it was so that sometimes single sex education can help you flourish in areas you don't normally like. And I just loved this
Mm.
electronics. We had these little breadboards,
Mm.
and we
Yeah.
had a booklet, and you could plug all the bits in and create like burglar alarms and build up to radios. And I thought it was like magic. And that grabbed my attention first. And like I'm pretty old now, and it was just when home computing was coming in
Oh
as well.
yeah.
So there was this thing, the BBC Micro. So there was the ZX Spectrum and the BBC Micro, and we have BBC Micros at school.
Hmm.
And I just found programming wonderful, that you could create, you could
Yeah.
type this stuff in. And originally it was like, there was none of these getting, the internet didn't even exist, as I've explained to my nephew. But you used to be able to get magazines which would have the code for games,
Oh,
that you would type it all in, and then you could save it onto
yeah.
your tape and have all that screechy noise. So that's what got me into computing as well. And I decided, like at my school, if you were any good at sciences, they wanted you to do medicine. And if you
Hmm.
were any good at arts, you were to do law. That's the kind of way
Yeah.
it was. And I didn't want to do medicine because it's a memory game.
Yeah.
And I like working things out. So I decided I wanted to do engineering and
Hmm.
electrical engineering. And um, then at my school, if you were going to get 4 A's in your A levels, you had to go to Oxford or Cambridge. But I didn't want to go to Oxford or
Yeah.
Cambridge because, well, I it's general engineering,
Mm.
and yeah, I wanted to do electrical engineering. And where I grew up as well in Northern Ireland, I suppose I was a bit intimidated by the whole pit, and I thought, well, it'll just be full of really snobby people I won't like. And that's when I talked to one of my teachers, and he said, well, Imperial's really good.
Hmm.
And I applied to Imperial, and I've never looked back after that. I had a great time as an undergrad there. And then I went on and did a PhD as well. And I actually ended up teaching electrical engineering
Hmm.
at Cambridge and at Imperial College. And then realized that I love teaching and I don't love research. And that's when I moved into
Yeah.
industry and had a very different career from what I expected, because I expected I was going to be a programmer.
Mm.
Then when I was doing my undergrad degree, the lecturer who did electromagnetics and motors and everything was
Hmm.
just brilliant.
Yeah.
And he moved up to Cambridge and said, will you come and do a PhD? And I went, yeah, that seems like a good idea. Another bit more study. And it was all mathematical programming and working for a machines company in the summer. And now that I've ended up, I moved into
Yeah.
trading electricity markets and now running markets and
Hmm.
designing systems. It's very different from what I thought I'd start out with,
Yeah.
but it's brilliant fun
Mm.
and really interesting every day.
In your career, you've moved up through quite a few different leadership roles.
Mm-hmm.
To a graduate or someone, starting university soon, how would you, what's the advice that you'd give to them to kind of move up like that?
So, um, my biggest bit of advice is do what you enjoy in life,
Mm.
because you're always better at the things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, when I was first a manager, I was a dreadful manager. I wasn't very good at it
Hmm.
because I'd been promoted because I was a really good analyst and I was the
Hmm.
best analyst in the team,
Yeah.
and I could solve problems quickly. And so I was suddenly promoted to managing 5 people, and no one told me how to manage
Mm.
initially. And I still used to do half the work of the team. I used to get irritated when they couldn't do it as quickly as me. But ironically, I was teaching friends, kids, maths in my spare time, and I was really supportive,
Hmm.
and I I was very nurturing and
Yeah.
understanding. And it was only when I realized management, like I got a lot of help with coaching, but my role as a manager is to bring the best out in my people.
Hmm.
It's to remove obstacles for them, and I think mostly what I do is now is help them think
Hmm.
well. So how did I get here? I didn't have a master plan. Like I didn't think so. The guy who was CEO of National Grid, um, and he's now retired
Yeah.
recently. He joined as a graduate, and he decided he wanted to be the CEO one day. So he did all the jobs
Hmm.
to get there and moved
Yeah.
around strategically. And I call that a destination career. Mine has been much more of a journey career. I I do things because I enjoy them,
Hmm.
but also when an opportunity comes up,
Just go
take
ahead.
it.
Yeah.
It's like I would get terrified at the thought of doing things, and this is actually a bit of advice for women as well. Over, I know you'll have a lot of male, but I hope you've got some female listeners as well. As women, I've done a lot of research on how you write job adverts. We have this tendency as women. Say there's 10 things on the list.
Hmm.
We can do 8 of them really well, and there's 2 that we can't do. Well, we can't possibly do that. A lot of my male colleagues, they see it, they can do 5 and they go, I'm perfect for it. So if you can do a job completely when you start it, you're going to be bored really quickly.
Hmm.
So when you're going into something new, think about what the gaps are, how you need to grow, and just have the courage to go for things.
Hmm.
Surround yourself. I've got a really supportive network of people I've built up over the years where we just support each other, give us encouragement.
Hmm.
And yeah, for instance, I never thought, like growing up in a wee housing estate in Northern Ireland, I'd have worked in Paris,
Hmm.
Amsterdam, and Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
and now be an advisor to the government. It was just never in my mind, but I just
Hmm.
had the courage to do things.
Yeah. You spoke about how like nurturing your team. I listened to the interview you had with Imperial, and you spoke about how in Saudi when working on the Neon project, there was that culture of people could really challenge decisions really quickly,
Mhm.
and people were very confident to do that.
Yeah.
How do you kind of integrate that in a UK team?
Yeah, it's about making people feel confident and
Mm.
challenging. And it's interesting because having come from an academic background originally, I I'm used to challenging ideas, and I'm a very extrovert thinker.
Hmm.
So I think through discussion. Most of my academic colleagues would go into a darkened room and think on their own and never say anything till they did it. And one of the things I found in when I was at National Grid first time around, when I worked at the system operator, I used to create something called Thinking Fridays,
Hmm.
because so often in your life you can get stuck in meetings every day and you're just going,
Yeah.
why am I here, and you don't make the time to really debate the big issues. So when we created Thinking Fridays was a day you could come and we could work on any problem together, but you had to not bring me anything boring like signing everything off. And
Hmm.
then the idea was everyone in the room was equal
Mm.
at that point. And that can be difficult because when you've got your director title or your background, people can. So it's about really encouraging people to have ideas. And
Mm.
what I find as well is the strongest thing I can say is, I don't know,
Mm.
because that gives permission. I know I'm smart and everything, but I don't know everything. But isn't that brilliant? Because I can keep learning and
Mm.
evolving. So the big thing I do is say, I don't know.
Hmm.
And also then, right, how are we going to find that out?
Yeah.
And it's given people the confidence to actually have ideas that aren't always right,
Hmm.
because otherwise they're frightened of challenging anything as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I also saw that you also awarded an OBE, which I think is incredible. I had to ask you about it. So, what do you think helped you achieve that kind of recognition?
So again, that was such a proud day taking my mum and dad to the palace, as you can
Hmm.
imagine. Um, so you never really find out what you got it for,
Hmm.
but the citation said so it was from my work when I was at what's called NESO now, the
Yeah.
National Electricity System Operator, and I did a lot of work on security of supply. How do we make sure we've got enough generation in the system?
Hmm.
But I also used to do a lot of work on flexibility and
Mm.
how we because if you look at the system, it used to be demand did whatever it wanted
Hmm.
and generation followed. But as we've got a world with more and more renewables, which the solar is when the sun
Yeah.
shines, the wind is when the wind blows.
Mm.
So we've had to adapt the system that demand more follows generation if we're going to not waste those green molecules. And so I did a lot of work with my teams in opening up flexibility
Hmm.
markets, and I worked very closely with government, but
Yeah.
also industry. But I think I got it not because of what I did, but the way I did it as
Hmm.
well. When I chair meetings, I always try and make sure they're fun.
Yeah.
It's like that we get stuff done, but it's fun doing it,
Hmm.
that it's really inclusive, that we listen to everything,
Yeah.
but most important, that we actually delivered results and we changed things.
Hmm.
And I think that's what I got it for,
Hmm.
but you never really know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I guess as a piece of advice to students, you already spoke about how, do what you enjoy, do what you're good
Yeah.
at because you'll be great at that. Um, as kind of things to focus on when you're at university or things to look for when you're in your early career, what are some, I guess, things that you should do?
Or so what did I do as an undergrad?
Mm.
So Imperial College is an unusual place. There's lots of engineers and
Hmm.
scientists, and people might be slightly shyer than
Yeah.
in others. But at university, I just got involved in things. There is a real temptation just to work and get really good exam results.
Hmm.
And I did get good exam results. I got a first and everything. But when you're moving into uh, a job afterwards,
Yeah.
it's all that softer stuff that really matters. And I think university is the time I grew up.
Hmm.
Like, for your age, you seem a lot more mature than I was at that age, I have to tell you. But I had a year out before university
Hmm.
as well. I worked for Xerox in Welland Garden City, and that was
Yeah.
good for helping me find my feet in England because
Mm.
it was a real culture shock. But at university, I was on the staff student committee, for instance. I always really tried to help people.
Hmm.
I was involved in the student unions, so Imperial's not very political at all. The student
Yeah.
union is much more about organising parties and things. So in my second year, I was the social secretary,
Hmm.
organising parties. I sang in the choir. Now it
Hmm.
was quite funny. I was teetotal at university as well. I didn't drink alcohol.
Hmm.
Um, Mainly because I don't like beer, and there was no good wine then, and people always thought I was drunk when I was sober because the Northern Irish are quite bubbly and extrovert anyway. And in my third year, I was actually president of the Engineers
Well,
Student Union as well, which was really good for having to deal with the senior academics
yeah.
and things. So I really enjoyed doing stuff away from my studies, but
Hmm.
I also took my studies seriously. And these were in the days before you actually paid anything to go to
Yeah.
university, because
Yeah.
I was there from 88 to 92. Um, but I worked when I needed to work, but I made sure I enjoyed my time as
Hmm.
well and built up those social
Yeah.
skills. And then at Cambridge during my PhD, I actually one great thing about going to Oxbridge is there's far more sports teams in that each college has them. And I like sport, but I'm not great at it.
Hmm.
But I started playing women's football again and
Hmm.
really enjoyed that and got involved in just helping. I
Hmm.
like an Imperial as well. I used to go to a local school and teach the kids maths and
Hmm.
physics
Yeah.
to help them with their GCSEs. So just get out there and do things that
Mm.
you enjoy.
I think a lot of people that have come on the podcast have said that soft skills are so, so important and that they
Yeah.
should really be focused on.
Yes.
Um, I think